Hello friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's start our video with a story in which we tell you why education does not equal intelligence. But some officers are too far up their own butts to realize that. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Military officers aren't always the brightest. In the military, everyone has a military occupation specialty. Cook, infantry, military police, mechanic, etc. Besides your MOS, you sometimes get tasked additional duties. One of those duties is being a driver. Usually, no one wanted to be a driver. All officers in commanding positions have a driver tasked out to drive them around. Usually it's someone low-ranking that the rest of the company won't miss. During my first deployment to Iraq back in 2004, we were assigned to a safe house in the middle of a town. I was working the front gate, where the gate sits on a single rail, where the gate slides side to side. We get word that the battalion commander was en route. The convoy stopped at our other safe house first. When they arrived at our location, I opened the gate, but the driver of the battalion commander wouldn't enter. I looked at the driver, Private First Class Hermes. He's just looking at the commander. Let's call him Lieutenant Colonel Einstein. I noticed that LTC Einstein has a full cup of coffee with the lid off in his hand. That's why Private First Class Hermes hasn't moved yet. When Lieutenant Colonel Einstein noticed they weren't moving, he looked at PFC Hermes and said, "Go!" PFC Hermes nodded towards his coffee, and Lieutenant Colonel Einstein just replied with a, "Hurry!" So he did. As soon as he went over the gate rail, the entire HMMWV, military vehicle, jiggled like a fat kid laughing. The coffee went everywhere, and all I heard in a voice that sounds like Jim Carrey's character in The Cable Guy crossed with the voice of Ernest from all those Ernest movies, "G.D. Hermes!" Soon after, PFC Hermes was no longer his driver. I'm sure Hermes was thoroughly sorry and promised it'd never happen again. And of course, so sad he was returned to prior duties. And our second story. All right, I'll park on the street. A little filler before I start. I live in a street that connects to a heavy traffic one, but it's a bit tight, so it fits about 3 cars widthwise or a truck and a car, but still one has to be mindful when passing through to make sure they fit. One house down on the other side of the street, there's an apartment building, and that was the reason for me to comply. There was a new family moving in last week. As most of the residents in my street have been living here for ages, we usually go out and greet whoever's moving in. These people weren't the type to be nice neighbors, though. Not only did they make eye contact when I was trying to greet them and say something like, "Welcome to the neighborhood," or whatever, they simply ignored and proceeded to do what they were doing as if nothing had happened. All right, I'm not one to insist on anything with anyone, so I just thought, they can very well live by themselves and nobody will bother them. I found out later that nobody really liked them and that they'd been rude and snobby ever since they came to check out the apartment. On the day of their moving, I happened to have to go out for a meeting. I work from home and those are rare. I don't even get enough time to get back to my house after they're over. When I arrived, their moving truck seemed to have just parked. The engine was still running and it was blocking my garage. To clear it up a bit better, my garage entrance is aligned to my front neighbor's, so we can both maneuver our cars better, and the truck had taken half of his entrance. Like I said, there's a heavy traffic street connected to mine, so it's normal for people to park on my street and walk to the main one, and there was another car across the street that was keeping me from being able to properly get mine to where it should be. I see that the guy was standing there beside the moving truck, so I get out and try to ask him to have the truck move like a meter down so I could park inside, and the following conversation happens. N equals neighbor, MD equals moving driver, MG1 is moving guy 1, MG2 is moving guy 2. Me. Hello, good afternoon. Neighbor. Hi. Me. Could I ask you to have the truck move down for a minute just so I can get my car inside? Just maneuver around it. I can't, the other car is barring me as well. Have the other car move then. But the truck's still running and I just need half a minute to do. Look, if you can't drive, maybe you should take an Uber next time. Then he proceeds to walk towards the truck and ignore me. I don't really want, nor do I need to park on the street, so I decided to try the driver since he was standing right there and the truck was still running, They hadn't even opened the cargo park yet. Me. Hello, good afternoon. Moving guy 2. Yeah? Me, directed to the driver. Look, I live in the house just across the street, and I was wondering if you could pull the truck back for just a minute. You can maneuver around it. I can't. The other car's blocking me, and I don't know who it belongs to. Look, you can just wait until we finish. But you still have the engine running. It won't even take a minute. MG1, just wait until we finish and we'll leave. MG2, look, girl, if we move, it'll be harder to take the things out of the truck. Just wait until we're done. Note that it was about 1 single meter down. They were just too lazy and wanted the truck to be aligned with the building's entrance. I note at this point that the driver has moved to the cabin and turned the engine off. He came out with the smuggest grin, gave me the worst kind of shivers, and the other 2 snickered a little and walked away to talk to the neighbor. The driver then comes to me and says, just park on the street. You can come back when we're done. And goes to join the others, all looking very satisfied with themselves. So being the good kid I am, I decide to obey their command. I'm just a young woman who can't drive after all. So I park right in front of my house. It was vacant as the truck was blocking the street, and if someone parked there, nobody else would be able to go through. Not my problem though. I can't drive, remember? I may have done the best parking job of my life that day and just lock my car and get inside. I knew traffic would start to pick up soon, as it was almost the end of lunch period and people would be getting back to their activities. My street's one of many shortcuts, and it's normal that we have traffic patrol come around many times a day. About half an hour after I get inside, I start hearing very loud, very angry, and very amusing car horns. Some people shouting to get the truck out. At this point, they were already taking the furniture out and never noticed where I really parked. This is where I get my satisfaction, when I hear the driver shout, "What the frick? That girl parked there! Where is she to remove that effing car?" And more angry drivers shouting at him to just move the damn truck and let them through. Right then, 2 patrolling officers pass by. Nobody called them, it was just time for their rounds, and see that too many cars were honking, a lot of angry people were getting out of their vehicles, and a massive truck was very wrongly parked, blocking everyone from passing by. I hear the officers telling the guy to move his truck. He tries to argue that it's that frickin' girl's fault. She parked her car there. And the officers just tell him that he's the one not properly parked and was to move his truck right away to stop blocking the traffic. At that point, I'd already come outside. I decided to come out when I heard someone shout something about the police to witness a very angry driver turn his truck back on and move the effing thing down the 1 meter I asked before and get it parked properly. The officers then go on their way and traffic moves again. Fantastic. I hope you have many more wins like this against them in the future. And our last story. Entitled Railway Land Grabber Gets Owned. This story was told to me by my father-in-law. During the 1990s, he worked on a project assessing closed railway lines for reopening. This included visual inspections of bankings and bridges to decide whether structural engineers would be required and further works would be needed. He'd drive his Land Rover lightweight along the line, or if it was too overgrown, he'd essentially chop his way through using a machete. In the UK, railways are created by Act of Parliament. They're outside standard planning laws, and the land remains property of the railways even after the line is closed. Often he'd find people had annexed the disused land, and part of his job was to explain to them that whilst what they were doing was not causing a problem right now, they could be in the future, as any line has the potential to be reopened without warning. And that if the act covering the land that they had annexed was repealed, they'd be given the option to buy their section of land, often very cheaply. This particular Karen attack took place in Wales. My father-in-law was walking along an old line which had been closed under Beeching's Acts, which was to be reopened to improve links from northern England to Wales. It was set to carry around 40 trains a day. He was doing the initial walk and talk to anyone he met along the way to explain that the line was going to be reopened. As I mentioned, Act of Parliament, so technically it was still a railway even though there were no lines. As he walked the line, he came across a barbed wire fence, which he had to negotiate. The land beyond was full of grazing goats and sheep. Just then he heard the screeching of the wild Karen, "Get off my land!" My father-in-law tried to engage with this wild beast. She was having none of it. She was screaming that she had this land for over 30 years and that she was claiming squatters' rights. Yes, squatters' rights are a thing, but they absolutely don't apply at all on railway land, as a whole different set of laws cover that. Karen then proceeded to release a rather large dog, which chased my father-in-law back to the gates of the enclosure. She virtually shoved him out of the gate and told him to F off, and that if she saw him again, she'd set the dogs on him properly. Cue 3 hours later. Due to the remote location, the site was hard to reach by road, and 2 British Transport police officers accompanied my father-in-law to the site. Karen was again a delight, until one of the officers arrested her for trespassing on the railway and issued her a £100 fine. Karen's whole attitude then changed when she had it explained to her in great detail that even though she had a small holding which bordered the railway, annexing the land was not allowed, and that with immediate effect all her properties on that land were being seized by the government officers. This included a number of animals as well as a large shed and a caravan containing a rather large lot of personal items. Turning on the waterworks after realizing the mess she was in, the officers explained that the line works were scheduled to start in 6 months and that she had until then to clear the land totally and restore it to its previous state, including all boundary fences. Amazingly, she was pleased as she thought she'd won by getting the reprieve. True to their word, that following spring, the heavy machinery arrived and they relayed around 2 miles of track, this restoring a curve and allowing rail traffic to flow again along the line, and Karen got to enjoy the sound of dozens of trains a day thundering past her house. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.